So Ruby is an object-oriented programming language created in 1999 by a man called Yukihiro Matsumoto. He set out to create a very natural, elegant language that took a lot of influence from languages like Lisp, Perl, Smalltalk. So it's going to have a lot of functional similarities, even though it is primarily an imperative language. Everything is dynamically and implicitly typed, so it's a really clean looking language, and everything is an object. So similar to Haskell, even things that are usually considered primitives, like an integer, will have methods that can be called on them. And the main framework that we're using for this project is the Rails framework, which is a web-based framework for generating dynamic database-driven web pages. And so our project that we're going to be demoing is basically going to be an overview of Ruby and Rails working in conjunction.
All right, so a quick description of the basic file hierarchy. We have our Rails project, and then within that you have your model, your view, and your controller organization. This is going to be the shelter controller, so this is basically what controls our web framework and what the Ruby is pulling everything from and communicating with. Then it directs us over to our views, which are basic HTML, which is what we're actually viewing on the web pages. We just have different pages here with the information that's going to be pulling stuff from the database. The database itself is made up of migrations. So we're basically just writing up some code where Ruby will take that and create the tables on the database, which is going to be an SQLite 3 database for this particular application. And then our particular schema that we have is just a couple tables with regions and shelters, and then they're organized. Shelters are within particular regions. When we want to go ahead and fire up the application, we're going to be in our cloud9.io.com within our workspace, and then we just go to run down here in the bottom. It's going to fire up the WebBrick web server, and then from there we can just go down here and click on this, open. It's going to bring us to our page now. So this is the Inland Northwest Homeless Shelter Database. We have regions across the top. When we click on a region, it will show us all of the shelters within that particular region. But in our home screen, these are all the shelters within the database, so we can see everything all at once in this particular area. Let's see here. We can add new shelters. So and then pick our region. And then when we create, now our new shelter is down here at the bottom. We can go ahead and click on that. It's going to show us new shelter, shows us what the address is, phone number, and then any description that we have. We can also click on Northern Idaho and we can see which other shelters are within that particular region. If we need to make any changes, we can go to our edit, just select it. Union Gospel Mission is this particular one. If we want to change it, make that short. Save changes. And now it's just UGM. Bring it back home and then still UGM. If we decide that we don't want something, we just hit delete and it takes it away. But here, just show another recap of all of our organization within the region. So you don't have to look through all of the list. You can see exactly where you need to be for your particular region. And that is it for the demo as far as the web interface goes.
So overall, our impressions of the language are pretty positive. It's a really kind of natural language. If we look at just some of the standard method declarations and everything is really neat, mostly because of the implicit type declaration. There isn't a lot of kind of unnecessary code. And in the process of generating kind of dynamic HTML, we're embedding a lot of Ruby in here, which looks really clean. Like we got simple for loops. The syntax for it is really kind of obvious, especially with the reserved words like for each of these things, do this within a list of things. Kind of similar to Python, where we can use more of a natural language to describe what we're doing rather than having to fall back on more of a C style of explaining each iterative step along the way. So it's definitely has a high level of readability and writability as well as orthogonality because everything is an object and everything seems to work together very well. The simplicity of it kind of suffers due to this. There's a lot of different ways to do um, the same thing. For example, just simple addition, you can use the plus operator to do, say, 5 plus 5. But because the value 5 is also an object, you could call the method plus, which is you type out 5 dot plus, for example. Mess that up. The command 5 and 5 is equivalent to using 5 plus 5. So there's like less simplicity in this because everything is an object, but I think it makes up for the fact by making the language just really natural to use. There is really not much GUI support for Ruby, mostly because it's been used for web development purposes. It's really easy to integrate with different types of databases. So there's a lot that you can do with it. It is kind of disappointing that you can't make more functional applications due to lack of GUI support, though. I think that's about it for our overview.
Overall, I had a pretty good time learning about it all, though, because at first it was a little confusing once you got the Rails system set up where it created all these files, trying to figure out how they all work together and pull from each other and how everything works, especially with the migrations. Realizing that you don't actually write SQL, you just kind of build it within Ruby itself, and it handles a lot of stuff for you. It was pretty cool. But that initial learning curve, it was tough at first, but once I got the hang of it, it kind of made a lot of sense on why they did it that way, and I kind of like that a lot too with this. So overall, it was good. Cool.